This video is about making finger joints like this one here. I used that finger joint for the bottom corners of this cabinet. I have a flat panel here, and that's joining up with a 2x6 that runs horizontal, and I wanted this connection to be really rigid so to give this cabinet some stiffness. So I made this tight finger joint to stiffen it all up. I would normally use my handy screw advanced box joint jig for making that kind of joint, but the side panels for this cabinet were a little bit too wide for this jig, so I had to think of another method for doing it. I could have made the box joint on my slot mortising machine, because with this crank and the turns cover I can very precisely control the vertical position, but I would have had to somehow figure out how to mount the panel on here like that, and that was just a bit too awkward. Or maybe the real reason was that I was looking for another excuse to find another use for my new pantorouter. To make the finger joint on my pantorouter, I had to make a template. I started making the template by marking 1.5 inch intervals along a piece of plywood. I then made marks where I had measured the 1.5 inch intervals, which I then used as a guide when I was gluing down the blocks to guide my ball bearing on the pantorouter. But the resulting template was not as accurate as I'd been hoping. I'd introduced too much error with all the steps that I'd taken to get my blocks in place. So what I ended up doing is I ended up trimming all the blocks to get them exactly on. I attached a ruler to the back of my template and aligned that always with the slot in my sled, and that way there's only one alignment that had to get just right to get the blocks all exactly in position. After trimming, my blocks were consistent to within a few thou of each other, so I now had a template for making some very accurate joints on the pantorouter. So my finger joint template here is actually 1/2 meter wide, or about 20 inches, and the bearing will actually reach all the way from either end to the other end of this, which gives me a range of motion with a router bit of 25 centimeters, or about 10 inches, so I can handle some pretty wide stock in here. And if I need to handle wider stock, I just have to move it side to side and then do another set of cuts. The tricky part with this template is that my slots in here are a little bit wider than the bearing here, and I don't want to have any play in here, so I always have to operate on this thing with the bearing against the left edge. Now, to help me do that, I've taken one of the springs down here, this one here, which is responsible for lifting this side, and I've disconnected it so that there's only the spring that's pulling the other part here, and that naturally gives the router a tendency to want to stick to that side here. So that'll help me make sure that all of my cuts have no slop in them, and with a 1/2 inch bit I get 1/2 inch slots. put the other corners of the cabinet together with just simple dowel joints, and I have another video explaining how I went through that.